Okay, so Genesis chapter 9. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth and upon every bird of the heavens, upon everything that creeps on the ground and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. And as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. And for your lifeblood I will require a reckoning. From every beast I will require it, and from man. From his fellow man I will require a reckoning for the life of a man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For God made man in his own image. And you, be fruitful and multiply, increase greatly on the earth, and multiply in it." Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, "Behold, I establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and every beast of the earth with you, as many as came out of the ark. It is for every beast of the earth. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth." And God said, "This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth, and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you, and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it, and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth." God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth." And the sons of Noah who went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the people of the whole earth were dispersed. Noah began to be a man of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine and became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on their shoulders, and walked backward and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned backward, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan. A servant of servants shall he be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant." After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. That is still just so mind-blowing. You're 600 years old, and God says, "Okay,
build an ark."
Build what?
Right? What's an ark?
Well, because I'm going to make it rain, Noah.
Right.
What's rain? You know? Noah had a very interesting life. Which is why it's recorded here for us to check it all out and see the blessings and the curses and the promises that are coming out here in chapter 9 of Genesis. So, as I said before, last week, I have an expository commentary. And so it's got a little overview. It says, surviving the flood was just the beginning for Noah and his family. Now that they've emerged from the ark, they face the massive task of rebuilding and repopulating the world. So think about that. You are the only human beings on earth. The only ones. And it is your job
What's even more crazy than thinking that is thinking they were the only human beings on earth and they still didn't get along.
Right? Ugh. Well, and we talk about a lot about our life experiences that we all have that have shaped our thought patterns and our behaviors and how we interact in the world. So, Noah's 600 years old. I don't know if we know for sure how old his sons are, but Noah's 600 some years old. They've got to be...
It tells us earlier, I think it was, at least Canaan, not Cain and Abel.
Shem and Ham and Japheth.
It may just be Shem that they tell us he was however many years old
he was
when when him and his wife bore.
And so, but my point being in that, we've had 60 plus years to shape our life experiences. They had a lot more than that. And now that whole thing has been wiped out, like literally, like all the towns. All you have is what came off the ark with you, and your siblings, and your parents.
And your siblings' significant
others, spouses.
No, say that different. And your siblings' wives.
Yes.
Now, this is where I think we got to draw that line that hurts a lot of people's feelings, but I'm sorry.
It's all right.
But the line is drawn in the Bible. This is truth. I'm sorry for those who want to be upset at what you're going to hear. I'm sorry that offends you, but you were born into a corrupt world that has told you lies your whole life. And this is what Ignite Truth's about, is facing the truth, not what we feel is right.
Yeah. And what
mind you, it's not just your feelings that get hurt through all this.
Right. But man, the weightiness of that.
Yeah.
The weightiness of that. Okay, so just as the original creation had been followed by a commissioning and a blessing for the first humans, so too this recreation will be recommissioned and re-blessed by God. In some ways, the world will be the same as it had always been, while in other ways it will be quite different. Noah and his family needed reassurance that humanity will not be wiped out repeatedly every 10 generations or so, something that seemed eminently plausible given the fact that human nature had now been transformed by the cataclysm. This reassurance comes in the form of a renewal of the covenant between God and Noah with a new sign of God's commitment to humanity in the shape of the rainbow. Just as the original creation was swiftly followed by a fall, so too this recreation of the world is marked by Noah's fall into drunkenness. The man who had walked blamelessly with God for 600 years gets drunk shortly after his new beginning. Just as Noah's righteousness had implications for his children, so too does his sin. Shem and Japheth seek to preserve their father's dignity, but Ham leaves him exposed to ridicule. As a result of this failure to honor his father properly, Ham, and especially his son Canaan, receive a divine curse. Divine election is once again choosing its own pathway as God determines who is blessed and who is cursed.
Well, one thing we have to look at here, though, is God did not curse them.
Right.
Noah cursed them.
And so, and God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." Again, what a responsibility. So just as God blessed Adam and Eve in the original creation, so now that blessing is repeated for Noah and his family. There's quite a bit in that all by itself. And verse 2 really stood out to me today. I haven't caught this before. "The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every bird of the heavens, upon everything that creeps on the ground, and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered." I was like, wait a minute. Critters have always feared man. Nope. And that's not what this says. They didn't in the beginning.
It's because there wasn't the predator-prey,
Mm.
which is what we talk about right here. Is this is the point that they became prey?
That they, right. So,
Not just for us, but this is where the lion began to stretch its appetite. And I say the lion. We've talked about that it was animals of all kinds.
yes.
So when I say the lion, I mean the feline.
Yeah.
Was it a leopard? Was it a lion? Was it a jaguar? Pretty sure it wasn't a common house cat. That's just my opinion. But at any rate, that's when the predator-prey
Starts.
came into the world, is through Noah's Ark.
So, yeah, however, whereas Adam and Eve had been granted uncomplicated dominion over the lores of creation, in a world in which there was not yet any fear, from now on the animals and birds will fear humans. These creatures will now learn the need to keep their distance from people, which is ironic and sad, since they have so recently survived the flood thanks to contact with Noah and his family. However, that same fear will keep Noah and his descendants safer from potential attacks by wild animals. Creation looks forward longingly to the day when the distance will be closed, and friendship between humanity and wild animals, even potentially dangerous ones, will finally be restored. And it says, confer with Isaiah 11, verses 6 through 9, and Mark 1 through 13. One reason for that fear among the animals and birds is the fact that from now on, animals, birds, and fish will serve as food for humans. Previously, it appears, humans and perhaps animals ate a primarily vegetarian diet. Though it should be noted that those verses in chapter 1, verses 29 through 30, said it should be noted that those verses describe the pre-fall state of the world. Abel's offering, and indeed the provision of clothing for humanity, suggests that meat was not entirely off the menu prior to the flood. Nonetheless, here God's permission for man to eat a broad diet is made explicit. And I didn't catch that before either. I thought it had kind of been all along, and in my brain, in part to allow for restoration, to allow for time for multiplication of the species here.
You thought the animals were always food?
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to get my head into yours and figure out exactly what you was thinking there.
Good luck. We know. Thank you.
You'll know when you see me in the corner rocking that I figured it out.
He's terrible. There is a single restriction is applied to potential food sources. Humans must not eat flesh with its life, that is the blood, from verse 4. It's striking that there is no reference here to clean and unclean animals. This distinction awaits the Mosaic covenant, although the principle that only certain animals may be sacrificed is already known to Noah. Nor is it simply blood that is prohibited as food, but flesh with its life. This suggests that the symbolic role of blood as representing the vitality of the animal is significant. Partaking of that fresh blood is thought of not simply as tasty or nutritious, but explicitly as a way of absorbing that life essence. And there are religions and cultures that is their...
Well, and as you're reading, my mind goes to the hunter. It's not just a culture, and I guess hunting is a culture. But it's not uncommon among the hunters that you have to be initiated as a young kid.
Right.
That when you kill your first animal, you take a bite of the raw heart.
Right.
That is so what this is talking about, in my opinion.
Yeah, a lot of the Native American cultures did that.
It was a big thing in the Native, and that's probably where we this generation, this people today got it.
Got to know that.
Is from the Indians and whatnot.
Right.
But
yeah. The principle lies behind accepting the blood of each sacrificial animal as representing its life. If the life of animals is to be treated with respect by regarding their blood as requiring special treatment, how much more special is the blood of a human being? The shedding of human blood requires an accounting, whether by an animal or by another person, from verse 5. In the case of domestic animals that causes a human death, they are to be put to death. It is plausible that wild animals that killed a person would also have been hunted down, although there is no explicit record of such. Ultimately, whether or not the animal is found and put to death, God himself is the judge who will call that animal to account. The same principle is true in the case of human murder. Justice for the dead person requires a commensurate payment with the life of the guilty party. The structure of the sentence underlines the appropriateness of the judgment. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. Verse 6. Murder is an assault on the image of God in man, and therefore a form of sacrilege, as well as being an assault on one's brother. It is a crime not merely against a fellow human being or even against society, but against God, which means that God is a plaintiff in every murder case, demanding an accounting from the guilty party. Capital punishment, rightly administered, is pro-life, inasmuch as it acknowledges the value of the life that has been taken. Given the explosion of violence immediately prior to the flood and the fact that humanity at its core has not been changed, these verses addressed a foundational element in a just society. The section is then rounded off with an inclusio that repeats the opening command, be fruitful and multiply, which is the opposite of murdering one's brother. Not to get into any, well, hello, Carla Kotak. Didn't see that you was here. I heard you say Carla, but it didn't dawn for me. Hello,
I'm like, I said hello.
You did, and you did good. I think you and I were talking about it this morning, how so much of the United States, of our Constitution, is founded on biblical principles.
It was us talking, I think it was this morning.
And here is just another example of that, and that's where I'm going to leave that and let that sit. So, okay. So verse 8, then God said to Noah and to his sons, behold, I establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and every beast of the earth, with you as many as came out of the ark. It is for every beast of the earth.
I really feel like here is where we need to draw into the word covenant. In today's society, we don't understand that.
Right.
When a man and a woman get married, that is a covenant. And a covenant is not to be broken. It's more than a promise.
Absolutely. I was going to see if I could pull it.
You're typing and it distracted me. Squirrel.
It's not going to let me, my computer's slow. Kimmers, if you're sitting there easily accessible, can you give us a biblical definition for covenant, please? My computer that I've got Logos running on is too
slow.
It's got a lot on it to just run Logos. So yeah, the guide says God previously established his covenant with Noah in Genesis 6, verse 18, though few details were given at that point. The word covenant occurs 7 times in chapter 9 here, in these 9 verses, highlighting its centrality in this passage. God here establishes his covenant with Noah and his sons, as well as the rest of creation, with explicit application for the future. This universal aspect of the covenant with Noah as being a covenant with all creations distinguishes it from subsequent biblical covenants made only with you and your seed offspring.
What I was getting to with covenant is the Lord made a covenant with us. He set down the guidelines.
Yes.
When we, humans, sin, we break that covenant. We break that promise from God. We're not keeping up our end. And that's where we find ourselves in a place that is unpleasurable. It's because maybe the covenant that we broke was having the one woman, one man joining together
Right.
and becoming one, and somebody steps out of that, be it just pornography or an actual affair, however that goes, now that covenant no longer holds. The blessings of God are no longer secure over that portion of your life. But it's not God who did it. It's man.
Yeah.
Man failed God. Therefore, the promises of God may not apply. Yeah. And that's, for me, that's where I'm trying to restore back to is where that was a chicken, okay. It's a weird noise. Restore myself back to walking within covenant of God. I broke it. I deserve whatever I get.
Right.
The things that come at me the last month and the way I was, that is of my making. More so than what I'm talking here, because I done figured out that God never leaves you, never forsakes you. Therefore, I must have left God in my lukewarmness because of trying to satisfy people.
Yeah.
But as long as we walk within that covenant, we have a promise over us.
And we see that biblically time and time and time again.
Now, even without the covenant, we can claim the promise. But it's not right to get upset with God when we don't receive the promise because we're the ones who broke the covenant.
Yeah.
Jumping in.
Thank you.
A covenant in the Bible is a sacred, binding agreement or solemn promise between God and humanity, establishing a relational partnership rather than a mere legal contract. It defines obligations, often sealed in blood, where God pledges protection and blessings in exchange for faithfulness.
In exchange for faithfulness. Thank you, my dear. Yeah.
It's a little shorter, but I don't think it's just between man and... I think a marriage is a covenant.
Oh, absolutely.
I have a covenant with you.
Yes.
That I am yours, you are mine.
Yes.
That's not just a covenant. It's a covenant with God too. It's your covenant with God, my covenant with God, but our covenant with all of us as well. My covenant extends to you. Basically what I'm getting at is I think a covenant extends further than just God. But it is more powerful, more above a promise.
Yes.
You can promise somebody something, and that still shouldn't be taken lightly. But when you come into a covenant, and that's why divorce is wrong, is you're breaking a covenant.
Right.
Not only with your spouse, but with God.
But
now
he
I
is...
have to add more.
Okay.
Relationship over contract. Unlike a modern contract, a covenant is deeply personal and relational, often compared to marriage. Cutting a covenant. The Hebrew word berith suggests a cutting of a covenant, which historically involved sacrifices to seal the agreement in blood. And types of covenants. Conditional requires obedience to specific terms to receive blessings, or unconditional, a promise made by God that does not depend on performance.
Okay. Okay. So this one, the study guide goes on to say it's customary for biblical covenants to have signs attached to them. For example, the Abrahamic covenant has the sign of circumcision. And we'll run across that here in a few chapters. These signs serve as visible and tangible reminders to the parties of the agreement that has been made. In this case, the sign is that the Lord has hung his bow in the sky as a symbol that it is no longer drawn and pointed toward humanity in judgment. I hadn't thought about it like that. And then some of the Psalms, he talks about his bow. I didn't think about that as being a weapon.
You thought about it as being a weapon.
I thought about it as being a weapon, I guess. In this case, the sign is that the Lord has hung his bow in the sky as a symbol that it is no longer drawn and pointed toward humanity in judgment. In a similar manner, in the Babylonian creation narrative, after the conflict between the gods, Marduk's bow was hung in the sky. Okay, I don't care about those. The rainbow is thus not merely a comforting reminder to humanity of God's promise. It is a reminder to the Lord himself, as he said in verse 15. This is not because God could forget something. Rather, it represents God's commitment to act according to all that he has promised in the covenant. The need for such a memorial is a regular testimony to man that God will be perfectly justified in once again bringing comprehensive judgment upon the world, since human wickedness continues unchecked. But he tempers his judgment with mercy for now. The day will come, of course, when he will consume the heavens and the earth in a mighty conflagration that will usher in the fullness of his new creation. So now we shift the text from Noah to his sons, preparing the way for the table of nations, which will define the relationships between the various nations of Israel's world. Shem, Ham, and Joseph have been named as Noah's sons several times before, but here they become individual actors in the story for the first time. They are described as the sons of Noah who went forth from the ark, which highlights their mutual experience of salvation, and as the ones from whom the whole earth will be repopulated. Ham is described as the father of Canaan. So remember what's going to happen here in the future. Canaan is a land that God's going to give to Israel. Ham is described as the father of Canaan, preparing for the curse that is to come upon the latter because of Ham's sin. As the ancestor of the inhabitants of the land later promised to Abraham, Ham is of special interest to Moses' original audience. Often in biblical narratives, a character's first actions are of pivotal importance for establishing his nature, and this is certainly true of Canaan, whose origins are corrupt and cursed. If Noah is a second Adam in being the father of all the living, he is like Adam in other ways as well. Not all good. Like Adam, he works the soil, he sins, and is ashamed of his nakedness. This underscores God's remark in chapter 8, verse 21, regarding the unchanged evil intent of humans' hearts. The sin of man bears bitter fruit in the next generations, with Cain killing Abel and Ham's son, Canaan, being condemned to slavery for his father's sin. This is the last notice of Noah's life, even though he lives for another 350 years, and it is a sad epitaph for a man who has walked with God for 600 years. With the flood behind him, Noah begins to work the soil by planting a vineyard, just as God planted a garden in Eden. When he drinks of the vine he has produced, however, he becomes intoxicated and lies exposed in his tent. There's nothing to suggest that he is the first person ever to engage in viniculture, or that the results of his drinking cannot have been predicted. His drunkenness is shameful enough, but it's compounded by his uncovering himself in his tent. The focus of the narrative is not on Noah's sin, however, but on that of Ham, who sees the nakedness of his father and subsequently tells his brothers about it. Attempts have been made to explain Ham's sin as some form of physical or sexual abuse of Noah, though the observation that in Leviticus 18:7 to uncover the nakedness of your father is a euphemism for sexual intercourse with a person's mother. However, this euphemism is used only of heterosexual sins, especially incest, which is not in view here. The book of Genesis tends to use a different euphemism, to know, for homosexual rape. Moreover, the obscure phrase in 9:22 is immediately clarified by the following verse, in which Ham's brothers do the exact opposite of what Ham has done by covering up their father with a garment while deliberately not seeing his nakedness. This suggests a more literal understanding of the nature of Ham's sin. It's enough that instead of covering over his father's private shame, Ham chooses to publicize it by further announcing it to his brothers. Shem and Japheth, on the other hand, honor their father even in this dishonorable state, restoring his modesty, recovering his nakedness, just as God had done for Adam and Eve with the garments that he created for them. Short break, sorry.
But not.
You doing okay?
I'm doing good.
Okay.
Sure.
When Noah awakes from his binge and discovers what has happened, he pronounces a blessing and curse upon his children in response to their actions. We've been saying a lot here lately. Your words matter. What we speak matters. Here's a prime. Here's going to be the lesson.
You are the created of the creator that spoke everything into existence. If you were made in the image of God, your tongue has creative power.
So here it goes. A blessing and curse that will have an impact not only on them, but on their children and their descendants in a lasting way. Just as Noah's sons have been blessed because of Noah's faithfulness, so too Shem and Japheth's lineage will be blessed by their honoring of their father, while Ham's sons, especially Canaan, his youngest, will be cursed because of his parental disrespect. Ham is the youngest of Noah's sons, and often in Genesis, the younger son is favored by God, but not in this case. This is not a blanket curse on all Ham's offspring, although it has sometimes been read in that way. It is a specific curse on Canaan, the youngest son of Noah's youngest son. Because his father Ham failed to honor his father Noah, Canaan will receive the opposite of long life in the land, a life of servitude under the descendants of his brothers Shem and Japheth. To modern readers, a curse on somebody who has not personally participated in a sin may seem unfair, but of course the same is true of blessings. God deals corporately with families, not simply individuals. Moreover, God's curse falls not on an innocent victim, but on those whose sins would have been well known to the original readers. This judgment is completed when the Israelites conquer the promised land in Joshua's days and has no further aspect yet to be fulfilled. In contrast to the curse upon Canaan, the blessings on Shem and Japheth are much more indirect. Indeed, the blessing on Shem is really a blessing on Shem's God, the Lord God, while Japheth's blessing is that as he increases, he should dwell in the tents of Shem, sharing fellowship with the brother upon whom the Lord's primary blessing lies. This implies that God will be Shem's God in a unique way, such that Japheth will find blessing only in identifying with the line of his brother, an idea that will be developed further as the book of Genesis unfolds. Indeed, the entire mini narrative has a longer perspective, but God chooses for blessing whom he will, younger or older, and no one can argue with his choices. Shem and Japheth's behavior are identical, yet their blessings are different. God has chosen the line of Seth to be the line of promise, so the calling for the descendants of Japheth is to identify with the promised seed of the Sethite line. This is a promise that finds almost no fulfillment in the course of the Old Testament, though it's anticipated in Isaiah 66. However, it is fulfilled richly in the New Testament as the gospel comes to the Japhite world of the Mediterranean in the book of Acts, and even to the descendants of Ham. Yet by the same token, God's election is not arbitrary. The judgment that is coming upon the Canaanites in the days of Joshua is related to their father's sin of disrespect, a sin that finds full flower in the Canaanite opposition to the descendants of the line of Shem and Abraham. Those whom God has chosen for blessing come and place their hope in the line of promise that God has provided. Whereas those who are reprobate will never come to him, and so a future of judgment and curse. It's not a case of the innocent descendants of Ham being denied the opportunity to repent and believe. There are no innocent descendants of Noah, and the sin of the inhabitants of Canaan is the primary reason for their subjugation and expulsion from the land. The passage closes by completing the genealogy of the line of Seth, interrupted at the end of chapter 5 to include the flood narrative. This reminds us that the issue of the two seeds is still with us even after the flood. Not all those who come from Noah will share his faith, and the distribution between believers and unbelievers is not a random distribution. God generally works by calling families, working for the most part through that structure. In this case, the line of hope will descend through the line of Shem, whose name means name or renown. God is the one who gives this renown, not human exploits. The ugly reality of the continuing sin of humanity, highlighted in Genesis 8:21, casts its long shadow over the whole of this chapter. What should be a joyful recommissioning by which humanity and animals alike are commanded to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth is overshadowed by fear. The fear the animals now have of humans, and the fearful reality that humans will continue to kill their brothers, just as Cain killed Abel. The theme climaxes in Noah's drunkenness, which leads to Ham's sin toward his father, and the curse that thereby descends on Ham's descendant, Canaan, and his offspring. Sin is an indelible stain on the human condition as a result of Adam's fall. Even though God singled out one man and his family for redemption, a man alone in his generation walked with God in righteousness, nothing has fundamentally changed in the heart of man. What can prevent yet another destructive outpouring of God's judgment that this time might wipe out the entirety of the human race? Well, we know what's going to come. But I think it's so interesting how some of the promises here carry all the way forward to the book of Acts. It blows my mind. There's no way that anybody could write that story unless you are the creator. Must be time for me to quit talking.
You're about to blow it. I think it probably does have a lot to do with the pollen from yesterday. There's a lot of movement through grass and whatnot. And I noticed when we first got out of the vehicle, I noticed a lot of the pollen, what I assumed to be pollen. I could tell immediately. But by the time we got down and around the lake, over the bridge, it was not made for fat guys.
But it held them. It just wiggled a lot.
But it was not made for fat guys.
Blessings and curses.
Blessings and curses.
Just.
I give you both. Choose life.
Choose life. You know how.
I found it interesting as was going through there, and it talks about the blessings following the youngest.
Oh.
Yeah.
I hadn't made that connection, but I see that.
I just did as we're going through it.
Right.
Just now did I make that connection. But it's like, oh, that's interesting.
That's interesting. Jacob and Esau, and there's another one that was right there on my tongue, and it's gone. Jan, help me out. Jacob and Esau.
You got to give me a little bit more than just a couple names.
There's more of it's the last one.
Yeah, all that's what this is saying
Yeah.
in this book, is that the blessings, most frequently, God's blessing followed the youngest.
Right,
and
not the firstborn.
To that, the youngest male, which is interesting considering how Ignite Truth has come to be.
Right. In case you're wondering, Dave's the baby of the family.
I don't think we need to say it quite like that.
He's the baby. Ask Jan.
Gee.
But again, and how you honor someone, you know, how Ham was like, have you seen Dad? Dad got drunk and Dad's in there. I mean, he's
gossiping.
He's gossiping about Dad. And the younger ones are like, oh my gosh. I always thought that was interesting that they draped something over themselves and they walked backwards and draped it over him instead of so that they didn't look at him, so that they didn't see that.
And how we take that kind of stuff for granted. Well, maybe not with our mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, but that
right,
gonna catch a peek,
right. And the rainbow. I love how that goes forward, but I never thought of it as in hanging. We've had bows around here forever, and they all hang the same way.
Yep.
That part had never pinged for me.
Except for when mine's at home, it hangs upright.
Well, yeah, it's upright, but for the most
But
part...
for the most part, they hang.
Right. Never considered that there was purpose in that. It's not aimed at you. Oh. And God's word, there's so much more. I mean, my dad always said you have to take the Bible literally, or don't take it at all. You have to take it literally.
And while I have to mostly agree with that statement, there's parts that is metaphoric.
Yes. And
that you must take metaphorically. You can't take them literal. Don't want you to cut your hand off or pluck your eye out.
Right.
But it would be better if you did, but don't do that.
Right. Like that.
Understand that this is trying to magnify the significance of what's going on.
Yeah.
It's not just you're sinning against a holy God that you were supposed to be a representative of.
Because you're created in His image.
Because you're created in His image. And when you act a fool, when you're an image of God, you're making God a fool.
Well, and so on a way lighter level, I've lost an earring.
That's big enough. We ought to be able to find it.
You know, our parents said, you be careful when you're out running around, when you're out, because you represent us.
Right.
And it was a long time before I put that into perspective of, and you represent God.
But how long did it take you to, even being told you represent us, for you to come to that understanding that your actions were a direct reflection of your parents?
I don't have the answer for that. Like us, people would always say, "Oh, those girls are so well behaved, and they mind, and they do, and the da." That was before I got to be a teenager.
Those girls. Okay, now I know which girls.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, we have boys and girls.
No, I just have a sister. But and like our kids, I mean, we go to parent-teacher conferences, and they're just angels, and we were always like, we'll stop by the house anytime, and you can see the real child. Hello, Mr. Dunworth. But to realize that you are, to realize you represent, that you were made in His image, and so of course you represent Him.
Yeah, but that's not dots we connect humanistically.
Nope.
We need the Word of God to make that connection that my kids are a representative of me, I'm a representative of my Father, and we're all a representative of the Father.
Like that. Like that.
Well, Kyle's, no, it just clicked up for us. I was going to say, Kyle's apparently been out there for a little while, because I've had 3 for most of what we've been doing.
I think he probably pops on a break, because I think he's working late again tonight.
See.
Could be wrong, but...
You had popped in here on Teams for a little bit, but y'all were talking.
Well, darn it. Okay, sorry we missed it. Maybe not. Maybe he got off work. Anyway, there's so much in here. The covenants, the blood is our life force, not just humans.
I was going to say the, not ours. The.
The life force.
Life is in the blood.
Yeah. And how that goes ahead and carries forward is mind-blowing as well.
When you start putting the effort in to see how the dots connect, if you just look at the Bible, it's real easy, as we've been talking on Friday nights, to discount what the Bible says.
Right.
It's just a book written by man. It's a bunch of old wives' tales. It's not reliable. It's whatever the current diss on the Bible is. And I forgot exactly where I was going with that, except for the fact that if you go looking at the book of Hindu, the Quran, the book of Buddha, any other book of religion,
right,
there's no opposition to it. But when we look at the Holy Bible, we do everything we can to discredit it, put it down, call it fiction, call it whatever. I personally have to ask, why is that so? Why is that the only one?
For like 4,000 years now, it survived, and trying to figure out Pentateuch, and yeah. For thousands of years it survived, and again, because not everybody, so many have sought to destroy it. And thank you, God, for the men who you entrusted with it, and those who have laid down their life for it, have given everything, including their life. Make sure
I would say their life and more, because I cannot imagine being boiled.
Right. And then living.
And living through it. And got the 40 minus, I think it's either 4 or 5 times. Been stoned a couple of times.
That's Paul. John's the one that was boiled. Was Paul? No, I don't think Paul was boiled. Paul was stoned. Paul was beaten several times. Paul was shipwrecked. But John is the one who was boiled and lived. And they're like, cool, go put you out here on the island so we don't have to deal with you anymore because we're tired of dealing with you, but you go, we'll put you on the island of Patmos, which is where he writes Revelation at.
At any rate, it's incredible.
Right.
And again, I go back, my first real, there's something here, was when we were at the nursing home and had to do
we're in lockdown.
Easter, while we was in lockdown, and it's like, Dave, you got to do this. And it's like, I know. But in that, with Peter, you look at Peter, even from the secular view that I had at that point, you look at Peter all the way up to the crucifixion. Peter don't change. Peter's Peter.
Right.
He's a knucklehead like most of us.
Right.
On that Sunday, actually I think it was on probably closer to Pentecost, something changed dramatically. You can believe what you want to believe happened there, but I believe that Peter believed, like we all believe, that God is God. He sent Jesus down. He was crucified, raised on the third day. We all believe that. But when you see that resurrected Jesus, you enter a whole new belief.
Yes.
And that's what we see happening through the resurrection of Christ, is that amen belief. That amen that I'm going to lay down my life for this belief system. Not just I believe, I'm going to die for it. And probably knowing you were going to die at that point that you stepped out. That this is going to cost me my life, but it don't matter. Because before I knew he was the Messiah, but now I know he's the Messiah.